Hello, this is Harry Paden. I am the host of Paden's Pulpit. This is season 1, episode 43. The subject is actually a part 2. I did part 1 last podcast. Native American heritage. Facts about Native Americans. Part 2. Okay, my last podcast, I delivered some facts on Native American Heritage Month, and this podcast will continue that with some facts on Native Americans. And I say this humbly because it sounds very cocky. I'm a cocky guy, but I say this humbly. Sometimes it becomes a challenge for me because I have acquired so much knowledge on so many subjects during my lifetime, and I'm an older person, so I've lived a long time. Me, Harry Payton, I feel it's my duty to share this knowledge with others. I can keep it to myself. I maybe can give it to my kids, my grandkids, just be selfish with it. But I feel it's my duty to share this knowledge with others, especially young people, and especially when it deals with things like Black history, other of color, Hispanic history, Native American history. These things are not out there, and people are even today fighting to keep this information a secret. One of the main reasons that I enjoy writing, I'm an author of 5 books. I've been writing since early, high school, editor of school newspaper. But one of the reasons I enjoy writing, because it gives me the opportunity to release some of the information I have in this crowded brain of mine and share it with my readers. I get a chance to look at it and copy and say, wow, this is phenomenal. Somebody might appreciate this information because I wasn't born with this information. I had to acquire it. In October, we celebrate Columbus Day. In November, we celebrate Thanksgiving. Both holidays, I've done podcasts on both holidays. Both holidays are mired with controversy. Most of it dealing with America's misinterpretation of history. I don't know about you, but I was taught in school that Christopher Columbus discovered America. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. That's what we were actually taught. I was also taught in English class that to discover is to find something which is lost. So, to justify, the stealing of land and the abuse of Native American, certain facts were changed in American history. We were taught that only a few tribes of Indians lived in America when Columbus arrived. They were named Indians because Columbus thought he was in India. So naming these indigenous people Indians was erroneous and offensive. It's like naming me or naming coming to the town I live in and saying, I discovered this town, and from now on, you're going to be living in the land of Slobovia. Wait a minute. Now I got to change on my... But that's what they did to the Indians. Here's some facts. These are facts. These are not something that Harry Paden just made up. You can look them up. I always challenge people to go behind me. When Columbus arrived in 1492, listen to this, 10 million people, Native Americans, were already inhabitants of this land. Not a few people by any chance. These inhabitants had already established societies. They weren't just living as tribes. They had societies which were rich, diverse, and sophisticated. They were not savages. Before Columbus arrived, Native Americans had already cultivated plants for dyes, medicine, food, and textiles. These inhabitants, Native Americans, had already adapted and reshaped the Earth's natural environment to meet their needs. There were already 2,000 distinct languages spoken among the inhabitants. They had 2,000 different languages among these 10 million people. Doesn't sound like savages to me. These inhabitants, Native Americans, were not primitives as we were taught. They lived in organized society with political structures and moral codes and religious beliefs. More about that later. They lived in communal societies and worked collectively together. That's just some facts, just some. Our history books purposely and erroneously depicted Native Americans, who they called Indians, as savages. Chop off your head. Well, I, Harry Paden, consider myself, listen to this is an important term because this is what I call myself, a revisionist historian. What is a revisionist historian, you ask? Glad you asked that question. A revisionist historian challenges the orthodox, established, accepted, and or traditional views held by professional scholars about historical events by introducing contrary evidence to what these scholars submit as historical facts. Oh, they would say, Paden, you don't know what you're talking about. They were sap. That's what they'd say. But mine are facts, indisputable facts. If you know where to look, you'll find these facts. But I'm giving it to you for free. Wait a minute. I'm not going to charge you. As a lover of history, I love history, I have offered contrary historical facts on many subjects. Most of these subjects we were taught in our history class. Well, as Ronald Reagan said, here I go again. Thank goodness, this is sincere. Thank goodness I live in America, because in other countries I would get in trouble for what I write. In Russia, if I said something against the government, if I said something contrary to their history book, I'd be in jail. But I live in America. Thank God. I have always admired, really, I really have, the framers, those who framed our Constitution, for the uniqueness of this document. And it helps to make this country the envy of those countries who do not guarantee in writing its citizens certain, quote, unalienable rights, unquote. Okay, well, here is some historical facts. Revisionist Paden is going to present some historical facts. Look it up. Not mentioned in any of my history courses. I didn't take history in college, but I ain't learned it when I, had it at the other levels of school. Revisionist historian Dr. Paden. I don't have a doctorate, not a medical doctor, but the knowledge I have is doctoral stuff. I know stuff. And I'm giving myself a doctorate. So revisionist historian Dr. Paden has discovered. Remember when I gave you the definition for discovered? I'm giving you stuff that was lost. That the U.S. Constitution owes its notion of democracy, guess to who? To the Iroquois tribes, Native American tribes, including our freedom of religion, our freedom of speech, our separation of powers in government. Turns out the only difference is the Iroquois included women and non-whites. All men. That was America. The Iroquois included women and non-whites. By now, some of you guys, like Gary Coleman in Different Strokes, are saying, what you talking about, Paden? The following are just a few more facts. Do your research and feel free to prove me wrong. Some 4 centuries ago, the nation of the Haudenosaunee or Iroquois people united in a confederacy to establish peace in what is now upstate New York. Remember, there were 10 million people here. The system of united governance between the Mohawk, Seneca, Onondaga, Oneida, and Cayuga, and eventually the Tuscarora people, sorry for butchering those names, enabled the Iroquois to become arguably the predominant Native American tribe in the northeastern U.S. prior to the arrival of the European colonists. The Iroquois were the top dogs. As a matter of fact, around the time of the 1987 bicentennial of the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Senate passed a resolution saying that, quote, the Confederation of the original 13 colonies into one republic was influenced by the political system developed by the Iroquois Confederacy, as were many of the democratic principles which were incorporated into the Constitution itself. You don't, Paden, why are you lying? Look it up. Public information. Senate resolution. H as in Harry, dot. C-O-N, which stands for Constitution. R-E-S. So it just goes H dot C-O-N dot R-E-S dot 331. H dot C-O-N dot R-E-S dot 331. It was passed in October of 1988, and it reads in part, quote, whereas the Confederation of the original 13 colonies into one republic was influenced by the political system developed by the Iroquois Confederacy, as were many of the democratic principles which were incorporated into the Constitution itself. I had to reread that. That's a quote. Of course, not all historians agree. After all, history would have to be rewritten because we named the indigenous people Indians and labeled them savages. They'll cut off your scalp. So we were taught. That's what I was taught. If we were to acknowledge that Native Americans, meaning that they were here prior to it being called America after Americus Vespucci. I know my stuff. America was named after Americus Vespucci. But if we name Native Americans, sounds funny because how could you name someone Native Americans when they were here first, but that's what we call them respectfully. If we acknowledge that Native Americans were not savages, but self-governing people, then it would mean that the colonists stole their land. And not only stole their land, stole their way of governing. A powerful quote from English novelist. Oh, Paden knows his stuff. This is an English novelist. Look it up. George Orwell. Orwell. He says, quote, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." Read it again, Paden. Quote, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. I am in control of my present, and I choose to educate myself and those who choose." Some people turned this off the minute they saw Harry Paden was on. So they don't choose to get the information, and I love them just the same. But I choose to educate myself and choose those anyway, who choose to do the same, of facts and nothing but the facts. These are not some hyperbole. This is not some made-up stuff. I got two books that I wrote. In both books, I give you where I get I have to do it. I have to substantiate it. In my bibliography, I substantiate it. Do your own research. Hopefully, revisionist historian Dr. Paden has given you some food/facts for thought. That's just a few. I can't, it's a short podcast. But hopefully I've given you some food for thought. Because there's a lot that we weren't taught. And I dare say, if you go into the schools, I'm just guessing that they're not teaching that. The state will cut off their funding. CRT is dead before arrival. Critical race theory. More information about these subjects maybe at some future. See what I'm saying? I got a lot up here. But I'm a nice guy, so I choose to share it. And I'm doing it because somebody, somewhere, if one person takes this information, I know one person does. And that's my daughter, Shahara. She looks at everything and she knows this stuff. But she looks at it in support of me. And that's the other thing that we don't always do. We don't support each other. Another subject, another time. I hope again that you guys, oh, wait a minute, Paden, you got to do something. I can't find it. I got my two books. Here's one. I'm promoting them a lot. Now you tell me. History/facts not taught in most schools. 2 chapters on Native Americans in this book, available on Amazon. Another book on a prominent Native American tribe. And this book is quotes and motivational words/stories, including the people behind it. And in this, I also include mention of a prominent Indian, I say Indian, and I hate when I make that mistake, Native American tribe, and that's the Hopi, Hopi. Thank you. May God always bless you. To God be the glory. As we end November, happy Native American Heritage Month. Thank you, Iroquois and the Confederacy, for giving us your Constitution. We stole your land and your Constitution. I said it. To God be the glory.